it was supposed to be 2 weeks, right? These things they try to get them through the system quickly so that there's a ruling, because we had gone 3 or 4 months at that point without really generating revenue as we were trying the other businesses. And now we're getting back into it, and it's not another one, right? Like they literally stop you from doing business. So they try to push it through quickly. However, we had what's affectionately called Snowmageddon.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
And you've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Welcome back to Clicks and Bricks. Today I'm talking with Hunter Austin. He's the co-founder of Kelley Austin, and he helps all kinds of businesses grow their sales channels. How are you doing today, Austin? Or Hunter, I'm sorry. Mr. Austin, how are you doing?
Doing great, kid. Good to talk to you. Looking forward to chatting on the podcast today.
Absolutely. So before we jump into what is Kelley Austin as a firm, who is Hunter Austin? Can you give us a little bit of background about who you are, your upbringing, what it was that made you want to be a business owner and entrepreneur?
Sure, absolutely. So like a lot of 20-year-old males in college that are sports fans, I thought I wanted to be a sports agent coming out of college. Either that, or I was going to convince Jerry Jones to let me run the Cowboys from a GM perspective. Growing up in Dallas and going to college at the University of Texas in Austin, that's what I thought I was going to do as a junior in college, sitting in class. So I graduated with a sport management major. I started my career in sports and entertainment, and by happenstance, I got a little bit lucky to end up on the side of corporate sponsorship in the sports and entertainment world, which had me sitting in boardrooms with fairly large companies pitching multi-million-dollar deals for sponsorships where I worked, which was Circuit of the Americas in Austin, where the Formula One races, we held the X Games, concerts, that type of thing. So I had the benefit of being in rooms with large business decisions very early in my career that made me comfortable about speaking to things like ROI and how to work through a pitch deck and working with high-level sales teams. So I later realized that sports and entertainment sounds a lot glamorous than it is, right? Yes, Absolutely. You get to go to events and go to games and go to concerts, but that means that you're working from usually like 6 a.m. to midnight and all the weekends and that type of thing. So I realized real quick I'd much rather be a fan than an employee in that world. So I started venturing out, and this is kind of where the real stroke of luck comes into play to kind of launch the rest of my career. So my brother-in-law, whose name is Waylon, his last name is Kelly, so he's the Kelley in Kelley Austin, and my co-founder now. He had worked at a job, and that company purchased Salesforce, and it kind of fell into his lap where he became the administrator. He was in charge of the rollout for that company. So he then later went to work for a consulting firm and told me about Salesforce, right? Hey, no, you're not happy. Salesforce had just come out with what's still around now is called Trailhead. So it's their free online training platform for anyone to learn how to work with Salesforce from either an end user perspective or an admin perspective. It's grown. It's crazy now. I mean, there's probably 1 million users. Everyone who's in the Salesforce ecosystem knows it and knows it well. But back then it had just come out. And so they were promoting it very heavily to get people to use it and give them feedback. So I would finish, it'd take me an hour to finish a module, and they'd send me a sweatshirt. And I'd finish another module and they'd send me, a Yeti cup. If they did that today, they'd be broke in 6 months. But I was number one in the world in Trailhead points at one time, because I would get home from my day job, and from 6 p.m. to midnight, I was on there just learning away, right? What is this Salesforce thing? I knew nothing going into it, right? A little bit on the technology side, but not really. So I later convinced his firm to hire me, right? To give me a chance. I went and worked through it. I got my certifications, give me a shot here. So I started on the implementation front, learning as much as I could from Waylon. And then I pretty soon moved over more to the front end of things for the consulting firm, which was the analysis and sales side of things, where we're pitching the customer, where I could pull on a lot of that experience from sitting in those boardrooms back from my first job in sports and entertainment. And then we kind of went from there. I can get more into kind of how we got from that first firm to now what Kelley Austin is today. But that's kind of the background of where I started my professional career. If we went all the way back, I was selling sunglasses and Ed Hardy clothing in high school on eBay. If you remember those brands, they were cool for about a year. So I've kind of had the entrepreneurial spirit since back in high school. E-com had just become a thing. And I was like, oh, this is going to be huge, right? I can get these sunglasses. So I was going to the post office, picking up boxes from China, putting them on eBay and on my e-com website and selling clothes. So I've had that entrepreneurial drive from way back then, as soon as I could operate a computer. And then it's just kind of grown from there.
Awesome. So then get out of college, do the sports entertainment industry. I did the entertainment industry right out of college as well. And it was, I lived on the road, so I understand that you never sleeping, constant grind all the time. You think it's going to be this glamorous thing, and definitely is in a lot of ways, but you learn you value sleep at some point very, very, very much. So congratulations on figuring that out. A lot of people don't realize that what they're, kind of go into their natural path of things. I find it interesting that you said, you were, just grinding on learning Salesforce late at night in those hours. You read the Mark Cuban books, he's kind of the same thing. Learn a piece of software really, really well, and then you can sell the hell out of it, right? So that's that is a very common theme that I see when I see successful entrepreneurs and business owners, that they've, learned something really, really deep, and they're great at selling that. Kelley Austin today is a Salesforce. I called it an orchestrator. You said a support system or support cycle or implementer. Tell us, what is Kelley Austin today?
Yeah, a lot of people will, there's a lot of verbiage, but implementation partner, SI is what a lot of people use as well. Consulting partner, all essentially mean the same thing, right? So a company goes and either buys licenses from Salesforce or already has Salesforce. And everyone that buys from Salesforce starts with the same version. All right. So whether you're an airplane manufacturer or a tile, subcontractor, it doesn't matter what you do. Everyone starts with version X, right? There are some products, and they're starting to come out with some vertical specific, apps that get you further for things like manufacturing or communications, et cetera. But for the most part, everyone starts with the same thing. So where we come into play is taking those kind of that platform and building it specific to your business, right? So even though we've built Salesforce for, 50 to 100 tech companies, every tech company is still their own, right? And they've got their own processes. Everyone's a little bit different. So even if we've got a lot of the roadmap, and that's where a lot of our consulting experience comes into play too, right? Hey, I know you think you want to do it that way, but don't do it that way. We've seen that before, right? We saw that 5 years ago with company X. It doesn't go well for these reasons. So that's where we come into play. We're customizing the software for the specific business that we're working with, so they get the return on the investment and that it makes their life easier, right? Salesforce isn't meant to be this cost center or this big brother. It's supposed to help people sell more. It's supposed to help, provide better customer service, more marketing leads, right? There's ROI supposed to be attached to it.
Absolutely. And if you can, we were talking a little bit before we jumped on about the sales cycle and knowing how long your sales cycle is. And a lot of like my companies, it's really hard because I have a lot of different products, right? So it's not one sales cycle. Every single product in my pipeline has a different sales cycle. And why is something like the sales cycle an important number to have at your fingertips?
Well, in being in the services industry, the hardest thing to do is to plan resources for us, right? It's this ever, we're always trying to balance the scales of too many people or not enough people, too much work, not enough work, right? It's literally the hardest thing. It's harder than implementing Salesforce for what we do, because we don't want to be in this position where we have to turn away work or turn away sales, because as soon as you start doing that, especially as we sell through the channel, because we sell directly with Salesforce, as soon as we start telling them, hey, sorry, pump the brakes, we can't work right now, they go find someone else, right? So that's a delicate balance. But then you also don't want to be in this position where you've got too many people on the bench, and then your margins are way off because you've got full-time people. So understanding those sales cycles and how they differ, we kind of have two different types of engagements. We either have projects, like your typical project that has a start and end and milestones in between, or we have ongoing support, managed services, what we call our Salesforce Excellence Program. And that's more of an ongoing piece. That can be a little bit quicker of a sales cycle because we're coming into an org that's already there and we're providing support. Whereas the project side, there's a lot of steps that have to happen in order for us to get to contract signature. So us planning around that sales cycle and knowing how long it's going to take, and then when resources are going to free up from other projects, I mean, it's everything in the services business.
Absolutely. Knowing what resources you need when you need them is vital. I like that perspective. Most of the time when I talk with a business owner on knowing their sales cycle, they go right into cost per acquisition. And I need to know what that is so I know what my marketing budget is and all those other things. So I'd like the perspective of knowing what my workforce needs are going to be 30, 60, 90 days from now. As we know, this episode is going to be coming out mid-2023, 2023. I don't think by then our hiring issues are going to be resolved, right? In 23, finding quality talent is getting more and more challenging every single day. So people understand the options, and they have a lot of options out there. So it's really, really important to know when I'm going to need people so that I can make sure that they're there so that you can support your clients.
Correct.
At the end of the day. Wonderful. All right. What kind of, if you were to choose, like, you're obviously you love all of your clients, right? But there's got to be a sweet spot client for Kelley Austin they're sitting there and they're beating their head against some kind of wall. What is that wall? Who is that customer? And what is the number one thing that you can help a business overcome?
Sure. So as in most consulting firms or service firms, period, really, when you're a certain size, you have a certain amount of resources, you can only service a certain level of client, right? And as you get larger, there's a few, I've seen like small advertising agencies still win big deals with clients just because of the way they operate. But for us, we've had to, and this is Kelley Austin is the third firm that Waylon and I have helped build. So we've got a little bit of the blueprint going into this, but it's always the same. When you're a smaller firm, you have to start with the smaller clients, all right? So the way that we think about it is how Salesforce segments their customers, which is by employee count. All right. So small business is like 1 employee to 50 employees, and then growth business is 50 to 200. All right. So when we were less than 20 employees, 20 consultants, we had to focus on the small business. So between 0 and 200, we just couldn't, we didn't have enough name brand recognition. We didn't have enough bench strength for companies larger to hire us. Well, fast forward now, we've almost been in operation for 2 years. We've now worked our way up to where most of our clients fall between 100 and 1,000 employees. We've got some that are larger, and we've got some that are still smaller that spend well on technology and understand the benefit there. But most are between 100 and 1,000. And Salesforce really wants you to start verticalizing when you get to a certain level, because that way you can speak from an industry knowledge perspective opposed to just a technology knowledge perspective. Right. You bring that other viewpoint. So we've picked a few places to specialize in. Communications, media, and technology is a subsegment for Salesforce. So we've chosen to really focus on that vertical. We also do a lot on the manufacturing and construction side. We've got customers kind of all over, but those are two of the industries where we've got a lot of in-house expertise on.
Okay, so technology.
And then construction and manufacturing. Yep. So communications, media, and technology is kind of a group. Okay. CMT is what they call it. And then manufacturing, construction, and energy is kind of another section.
Yeah, and I can imagine those sales cycles are wildly different, right? The scoping calls, the making the presentations, all of those things. I'm sure that is those are very complicated. I work with a couple manufacturing firms as well. So,
and it's funny, we've actually seen it flip in the last 6 months. It used to be manufacturing and construction was slow, and tech was, whatever. We've got the money and go.
Right.
And November of 22 hit, and tech went through this. Hold the phones.
Right.
We've got to run this through 14 different people before we sign off on anything, and we better talk to 3 references. We better see ROI metrics. All of that because of what's going on in tech right now.
And for the first time in 10 years, in February of 23, the cloud growth of the hyperscaler clouds stopped. It's not growing anymore. Like the cloud growth appears to be paused at the moment. I don't know if it's done, but there's definitely a pause at the moment with this, all the new AI and stuff going out. So who knows what's the future is going to be a wild, scary ride across the board. So
it's a good way to put it.
I'm super excited, and I just hope that the people of our beautiful planet Earth understand how powerful some of this technology is, and they know to not take things at face value very, very easily. And what we're going to call the internet 3 or 4.0. So it is. Sure. All right, Hunter. You've got a couple businesses under your belt now. You got Kelley Austin off the ground 2 years ago. You got the company up and running, and a wild storm runs through Texas. And I hear that a wild storm runs through your company all at the same time. Can you tell us a little bit about what you can tell us about those first several months in the company, what that big hit was to you, as much as you can tell us, and most importantly, after taking that big hit, how did you overcome it and get back to work?
Sure. So Waylon and I, we had always thought Waylon and I, brothers-in-law, we've known each other for 13 years now, something like that. And from the beginning, when we started both working in Salesforce together, we always thought, all right, at some point, it's going to make sense for us to go into business together, right? He's got 3 kids. I've got 2 kids now. Things happen, right? Sometimes stars don't align. But at the very beginning of 2021, we were both in a position, and it made sense, right? We both were like, okay, we're ready to go into business together. We didn't want to go into Salesforce services in the beginning, right? We had just come out of it. We were kind of burnt out. There's a lot of things that happen in the industry and ecosystem that can be just a drain, right? So we toyed around with some other ideas. We see if we could make something else work. And eventually we're like, all right, we've got to go back into Salesforce services. What we know, we can't sit here and not make money trying all these other things for very long, right? We've got families to support. So we said, all right, let's try to go back in and we're going to do it our way. We're going to change some things that are important to us, and we're going to try to do it our way. So we make that decision in January, and we get started on everything. And it had literally been 2 weeks since we said, all right, we're going to go back into this, and we get hit with legal action that shuts down our ability to do anything with the business. Literally puts a halt to it. We can't make a phone call, anything. Right. Or we're in jeopardy of going against a court order. So
you got a court order, not just a cease and desist. You got a court order to stop.
That is correct. Yes. We could not reach out to anyone. We couldn't do any business activity at all.
Right. So is that in the form of a temporary restraining order?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
So
I think I've got an idea of what that case was, and I'm somewhat familiar with how that goes. So that was a 30, 60, 90 day kind of deal.
It was supposed to be 2 weeks, right? These things try to get them through the system quickly so that there's a ruling, because we had gone 3 or 4 months at that point without really generating revenue as we were trying the other businesses. And now we're getting back into it, and it's not another one, right? Like they literally stop you from doing business. So they try to push it through quickly. However, we had what's affectionately called Snowmageddon in January, February of 2021 in right. all of Texas, in Dallas, Fort Worth, where I live and my co-founder lives. we were hit extremely hard, right? Neighborhoods without power for weeks, people without running water, et cetera. It was a nightmare, right? You couldn't drive anywhere or anything. So the court date ended up continuing to get pushed back. And so we were just sitting there. So nothing to do, helpless, right? Like this is what we know. This is what we had both been doing for the past 8 to 10 years of our lives, right? It's not like you can just go pick something else up and, ruin all of this knowledge that you had. So, I mean, we were panicked. Honestly, the most stressful part of probably my life, especially my career, right? Sitting there wondering what's going to happen. So a lot of praying, a lot of meditation, a lot of, that we're going to figure this out one way or another, right? Waylon and I both have that kind of mentality, right? We're strong enough to get through this. We'll figure something out. We've been blessed with enough knowledge and skill to get through things like this. So eventually the hearing ended up happening. It probably ended up being about 4 weeks later. And we got a ruling that we were allowed to continue working. So at that point, it's, all hands on deck. We're trying to get back to the people because we had started to drum up a little bit of business on the client side. We had to stop talking to them. So we tried to go save those things. Again, there's multiple times in the story where strokes of luck happened, but a guy that I used to be, that I went to high school with, ended up getting a job at Salesforce and brought us into a deal as kind of our first deal to help us get off the ground. Which was a nice size deal. So kind of got the company rolling, and then it was kind of a domino effect from there. As we did good work, more clients came and more people wanted to bring us deals from the Salesforce channels. But it was, we almost never got off the ground.
Wow. That is, it's a huge challenge. It's happened to me a few times, right? So, and if you're in that boat as a business owner, you get a cease and desist, always talk to your lawyer, right? But that temporary restraining order, typically those come along when somebody thinks that they have some kind of contract with you, that you have a non-solicit or non-compete, and they think that you're competing or soliciting with them directly.
Correct.
They can't issue a temporary restraining order. You can't do anything in that line of business, or it becomes criminal, right? I think.
Correct. Yeah, it is criminal.
Up until that point, this is a civil case. But then if you pick up the phone and you call, then it's criminal, and you're breach of court and all kinds of stuff. So that's serious stuff. If you ever get those, really immediately talk to your lawyers, because you can get into a lot of trouble really quickly. And those kinds of things reach the corporate veil. You can personally be in trouble for doing those things.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not warning shots. They are. It's it's serious. And we had to go there. You have to go through all this hassle, and it's not a fun process.
It's scary. So congratulations for getting on somebody's radar big enough that they did that to you, and being able to push through and still have today a successful company. I know that that's wildly challenging. Very seldomly in your budget, because I'm sure when you're doing your budget, there's going to be 3 months that we can't do anything, so we need to have payroll. Right? That's not how you budget. You do a percentage for maybe, we're off somewhere, but the 3 months with no revenue is not something.
Oh yeah. Personally. Yeah, exactly. No, not at all. We're far from planned for that.
Right. Maybe we should start predicting that in 23, right? Maybe we should just have in our budgets, maybe we might not get any revenue for 3 months. Because it's been happening more and more frequently in our lives than we've never thought would happen. So
yeah, fair enough.
Hunter, I love this story. Congratulations for getting through it. That is huge. Thanks. A lot of people, they just close their doors at that point. They're like, they give up, and I don't understand that. When you were served that, so let's just go through a little bit of your psychology here.
Sure.
You and your partner didn't want to go into Salesforce automation right away, or integration, and you were kicking the tires from other stuff. When you got that, I'm going to call it a cease and desist for now, because I don't know.
That's fine.
Whatever it was, right? You were told to stop, and you made the decision to stop and not continue moving forward in that line. What convinced you to say, hey, we're going to hold off and we're going to win this case, and we're going to get back to work? instead of saying, you know what, let's just pivot and go somewhere else until this is taken care of?
I think there was, I'm not going to lie to you and say there wasn't a little bit of pride there. Like I felt like I was being wronged, right? Like I didn't feel like it was fair and that I had done everything that I was supposed to do the right way. So there was a little bit of that.
Right.
There was also, for anyone that potentially gets in that situation or is fear of it, like there's a lot of things wrong with our judicial system, but to their credit, they do move those along quickly, right? So I knew if that was going to be a 6-month process, then I probably would have said, I can't afford it. I've got to go somewhere else, right? We're going to have to figure out something else. We're going to have to pivot. And maybe 6 months later, if things work out, great, we'll revisit it then. So the fact that I knew it was only going to be 2 weeks, that ended up being 4 weeks, was a little bit more, okay, I was going to have an answer one way or the other, right? On what I was going to do. So okay. I wanted to at least see it out, but I was fully prepared. I was preparing myself for, okay, if for some reason we don't get the answer we want, then what do next steps look like, right? Where am I going? So the idea of, do I just not even give it a shot and go do it now and go do something now and not even fight it? That would have come in a lot more consideration if I didn't understand it was going to be a 2 to 4 week process.
Okay. I like that answer. Also, I think, I'm obviously I'm a guy, right? I don't like to bring fights to people, but if people bring a fight to me, I kind of enjoy it, right? I'm like, okay, let's armor up and let's go through this. I'm in the right here, right? I'm being wronged. So you made a decision to start a business. Somebody had a conflict with that. They said, hey, stop this. And they used the legal system to do that. That caused damages to you, your family, and your company, and all of those things. A lot of people then, especially with that kind of, I'm in a fighting mood now, would be spiteful and go back after that company for the damages that they caused. What was the decision process on saying, you know what, this is a sunk cost, I'm going to move forward with my life instead of going back after them for that month of damages that they did to your company?
Yeah. I mean, some of it just comes down to the way I operate as a human, and both Waylon and I are Christians, and we try to live our life and be great examples in that manner, period. Right. Even when we're in spots like that where it's like, you're so frustrated, but also like it's the first time I had been through a process like that, and you're so thankful just to be done with it. The last thing you want to do is like go back into it. Like regardless of what you think the outcome is going to be, no one wins in that situation, right? Even if someone does get awarded something in a business lawsuit or something like that, like there's still no one really won, right? Maybe you lost less than the other person, but it is a brutal process for everyone involved. And all we wanted was to be left alone. We wanted nothing to do with the other side of the house. We just wanted to be able to go do our own thing. So then it's like, we didn't want to run back into the bear cage to try to fight the bear because now we felt like we had a weapon, like that. So we just wanted to move on, and we were thankful to be left alone at that point to go do our thing and without having to worry about anyone else.
I know exactly where you're coming from. I don't know who the quote come from, but I love it so much. And winning a lawsuit is like winning an earthquake. Right?
Yeah.
It's just nobody wins in that situation. Everybody's going to come out with significant damage, right? It is one of the most miserable experiences of my life is being in the legal system. So congratulations for taking that blow, swallowing your ego, and deciding that, hey, my future business is more important than this petty stuff. And this month that I lost, it's a sunk cost, right? I got to move forward. If I want to build my business, do I want to sit in court all the time, or do I want to actually grow my company? And that's sometimes a hard decision for people. So hopefully if somebody's sitting there scratching their head, man, I'm going to sue that guy for doing me wrong, they see this and like, I want to be a successful company, not in court my entire life. So
it's my advice to entrepreneurs and founders starting a business would be to stay out of court as much as possible.
Absolutely. Okay, so you support clients of somewhat of a bigger nature. And I like to be the small business advocate, right? I love Main Street. I love the hustler, the grinder, that $2 to $5 million company. But that $2 to $5 million company, he's not really, is he ready for Salesforce yet? Or is he still running spreadsheets, kind of maybe some other, Kanban kind of style sales automation tools and stuff like that?
Yeah. So it's always a difficult question to answer because I don't want to say like, the 10-person company with 4 of them being salespeople, whatever it is, has to use Salesforce, right? Like, can you still run a business at that size with a spreadsheet or with something that's less expensive than Salesforce? I mean, yes, right? Like you can brute force your way through a lot of things at $2 million of revenue. But where I challenge people is that there are different editions of Salesforce, right? The cheapest one, or the cheapest one that I would recommend anyways, is $75 a user a month. Okay. So it's not cheap, right? And that's standard rates. You can get discounts for different things and stuff like that.
For a sales rep, you're going to pay that for his LinkedIn account, right? For his LinkedIn
exactly. You're kind of used to that amount at this point, right? It's not egregious. And that still gets you a certain level of automation on things and that type of piece. What I would say is that when people think Salesforce is expensive is because they buy Salesforce and then they use it like a spreadsheet, right? Opposed to using the actual features and functionality that are in Salesforce that get you those analytics so you can figure out how to get from 2 to 4, right? Or those analytics so you can figure out why churn is 15% this month and you've been running at sub 5, right? If you're not using it to get you those things, and all you're using it for is essentially a Rolodex with fancy, cartoons that come up in Salesforce thing, then you're going to look at it at the end of the month and you're like, why am I paying $2,000 a month for this software? Right? It's doing is what a spreadsheet could do.
Right.
So there are lots of either independent contractors that you can go find on things like Upwork.com. There's a lot of Salesforce specific ones now, where if you're that 5 million or less company, go find someone like that that has experience and now is doing their own thing because they want freedom, et cetera. And have them walk you through, like, bring your business challenges to them and have them walk you through and build out Salesforce to help you actually solve those challenges. Because I promise you will get the ROI out of the tool as long as someone's setting it up for you to actually get the value out of it. And then when it comes time to go from 4 to 10, which is crazy hard, you've got that backbone in place to do it, right? And you've got your metrics and you can see. It's so much easier to see what 4 to 10 looks like if you're using a system like Salesforce to track all this data and all this activity, and you need to buy another sales rep, you need to hire another sales rep, or I guess buy, or you need to hire someone else in customer support, et cetera. That's even more important that you lay that foundation early if the budget's there, right?
Absolutely. And I think if you're hiring sales reps for a company, even a small firm, 10 employees with 4 sales reps, I mean, $150 in software for your LinkedIn profile and your Salesforce isn't horrible. I think the adoption from the company is the most important piece, right?
Yep.
Adoption to use it.
And what I'll say is, if you can't afford that for your sales reps, you hired sales reps too early, right? Like, you should have still been the sales rep. If you can't afford, $150, $300 a month for your sales reps to have tools, you can't afford to have sales reps.
I 100% agree with that. It is. I see all kinds of different scenarios, right? Because I work with companies as small as the $150,000 company all the way up to $1 billion firms, right? And I like them all for different reasons. When you first go into that, say a $25 to $50 million company, and their sales team is running, and I'm assuming we'll find consistency throughout the whole process. What do you see the number one thing that they're missing is right out of the gate?
So if companies aren't using something like Salesforce, and even sometimes if they are and need help, but It's typically from a sales perspective. Okay. And just to be clear, we do sales, service, channel, marketing.
Right.
Salesforce has a bunch of products. From a sales perspective, it's typically pipeline visibility. Is typically what companies are bringing to us that they're having an issue with. And it's usually at that size of company, right? It's usually an executive who's raising his hand and is like, I've got no clue how much money we think we're going to sell in Q2, right? Or how much we're going to sell in
KPIs.
I've got none of that. No probability. I don't know what we're selling, right? If it's like a manufacturing company, then you start getting into inventory issues. If it's services company, then you're getting into resource issues, right? If you've got something that you have to sell with it. So it's typically around that, right? I don't know what's coming up. I don't know what my sales rep is working on. I get a spreadsheet every week. I don't know how close it is to close. I don't know how often. Sales reps activity is another one, even though I'm not a huge fan of that idea. A lot of executives usually bring that to us.
I find that real reason there. It's called salesperson productivity, but it's really lack of follow-up, right? They're out there hustling. They're finding new leads, but they kind of fizzle out after 3 or 4 attempts. Oh, he's not going to buy from us, and it's gone. Which we really know that nurturing that client over longer periods of time increases those sales numbers by, sometimes by 100%. Right. Yeah. Most of the time.
I always say following up is a skill. Following up is 100% a skill. And if you're a company where a sales rep could be working more than 10 opportunities or deals at a time, good luck if you don't have some type of CRM in place that is flashing big red in their face, like follow up with this person. It's been 4 days. Like we haven't heard anything. Have a touch point, whether that's phone call, email, drop something off, that whatever it may be. But like those things fall through the cracks so quickly if you're dealing with, more than 10 deals at a time.
Right. And that should be automated, right? Like the email should be going out automatically. It should pop up into my calendar saying, hey, you got to call this guy today or this lady today. All of those things, those next actions are so important. It's the number one thing I see with firms under 5 million today is that they're not following up with their leads. They call 2 or 3 times, or sometimes worse than that, right? They didn't close it when they called the first time. And it's like, oh, I didn't close it. And they go on with life. And I'm like, you got to follow up with these people. So
especially if you're not a transactional company where your deal size is fairly large compared to your annual revenue, right? If you get that lead comes in that is a fit, right? Like you should, those people should be, you should work until someone tells you to your face, like, leave me alone at that point,
Absolutely.
right? Like that's what I'm telling our sales reps. So when someone comes in that's in that 100 to 1,000 range, they're in an industry we know, like if we don't get a deal with them, we better get a solid no, I don't want to work with you. And that's fine. But until we get that, keep going.
Right. You got to keep following up. And there's fortunes are in the follow-ups, right? I mean, that is the sales mantra. And the small firms, I wish if they would learn that, I think if they would learn that, they would grow much, much, much quicker.
And for the transactional companies, the whole thing can be automated, right? Where you're trying to get someone to buy something that's $50 or sign up for a $19.99 subscription, right? Then you automate it, right? You don't need to put your sales team towards all of that. But so it depends on business size.
I think my lowest end customer is going to be about $1,000 per ticket item, right?
Sure.
It's kind of the lowest side on a recurring model. Over 12 months, they keep the client generally. So, across the board, that would be the low end. Hunter, I've had a blast talking with you today. For those smaller firms, do you have something that can help them out?
I do. So, and it's not even just smaller firms. We have a model. I spoke to it kind of earlier. So it's our version of managed services, which is a popular term, which just means like ongoing support with your Salesforce ecosystem, right? You're in it, you're using it, but people have things that come up. They need help with stuff. You want changes, right? What are you going to do next? What do you not know you can do with Salesforce? So the program that we have, it's called Salesforce Excellence, is what we use for the verbiage for our managed services offering. And it's perfect for companies that can't afford, or it doesn't make sense for them to hire a full-time admin, right? Salesforce admin. So you maybe only need like 10 hours a week of support and ongoing services, that type of thing. We also work with a lot of companies that have a Salesforce admin in-house, but that admin is doing constant day-to-day stuff, keeping the lights on, right? Or maybe they don't quite have the skill set that our firm does as a consulting firm, where we work with hundreds of clients and see it across the board. So if you go to the website, kelleyaustin.com, and go to services, then you'll see that Salesforce Excellence or Managed Services offering. Kelley is Kelley, and then Austin like the city. You've got all the details there. There's a whole guide on kind of how we operate. One of our big differentiators is that we put a solution architect on the project opposed to just a consultant. And that solution architect is someone with years and years of Salesforce experience that is impossible for pretty much any firm that is an enterprise to hire in-house. So you get access to that person to say, hey, I know you're doing this with Salesforce. I've learned your business over the last 2-3 weeks. You should be doing this too. Are you interested, right? Do you want to hear more about it? They're guiding you. We call them like a Sherpa that we put on that project for you. So all those details, as well as like the pricing matrix and everything, you can get by just giving us your email, and then we'll send it away.
Wonderful. So you've got services for the low guy, kind of ad hoc, come in as your Salesforce add-on admin. That's for like the DIY guy, right? Hey, I got the bulk. I understand the tech. I can get this done, but I might have a question from time to time, or I'm gonna need some help offloading some of this work because I just need more time. I love it. That's wonderful. And that's kelleyaustin.com.
Correct.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time today, Hunter. I've had a blast talking with you and learning about you and your company. Congratulations on all of your success. And I think that you're bound to have much, much more throughout your career. So thank you for your time today. Do you have anything you would like to leave the audience before we go?
I don't. Nothing witty. Again, I appreciate the time. I'll work on a sign off tagline for next time. But I appreciate talking to you. And if anyone does have Salesforce questions, anything like that, our team, we love just chatting about stuff too. So even if you're not interested in services with us, if you drop a note online, we'd love to just chat and run through ideas and give advice. We want to see people be successful in the platform. We know what it can do for businesses, both big and small.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time today, Hunter. I've had a blast talking with you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate it. You too.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Clicks and Bricks. Get to work.